Welcome in Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. It is great to be here as we kick off another week with you, and it feels like another weekend in the books. And the lead story in this town is tied back to violence. This time, thank goodness, we're not talking about necessarily homicides, but we are talking about a prime entertainment area in this community, once again, facing violence. Facing gunshots, facing blasted out windows. And that was right on the Plaza. This took place Saturday night, and it was, not 2 a.m., wasn't midnight, wasn't even 10 p.m. This was 6:30. Still broad daylight this time of year. Saturday. Emergency crews get called to the Plaza near the Shake Shack, right on 47th. And what came out of that? Well, you got shootings. You got multiple vehicles getting shot into, one of which was occupied at the time. And amazingly, there was not a single injury. So here's what's going to happen over the next couple of days. If it really even gets a lot of coverage today in local media, I'll be surprised. I will. I mean, they're going to try to move on very quickly. They have never dissected the crime issue in major entertainment districts over the last couple of years in this town like they should have, because they're trying to protect a lot of people in power. But if they're doing their job, this will be the lead story today and, frankly, throughout the week here in Kansas City. It comes just days after, less than a week after, a vote went down in Jackson County where people said, we do not want to go to a downtown urban environment to watch baseball games. And while we talked that to death last week, there were a million reasons where people voted no and why people voted no. And one of those reasons for some of you is, I don't trust the leadership in that city to keep me safe. Whether it's multiple shootings down on the Plaza in recent years, whether it's, what happened at the Super Bowl rally, the people who would go to these games, many voters in various parts of Jackson County, do not trust, understandably so, I will add, do not trust the people in power to keep them safe in that kind of an environment. They feel better going out to the Truman Sports Complex. Okay, fine, there's nothing out there. There's not a cool mechanical bull. There's not a bar that they really want to go to. But they can drive in to a fairly secluded, protected area because you got to pay to park. They can pop open a trunk, pop open a beer, and walk into a baseball game, and then drive home in 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes after said game. They're not walking through streets they're not comfortable in. They're not trying to get out of parking garages. They're not jammed in like sardines to said parking garages. It wasn't the reason the vote went down last week, but Saturday and a shooting down on the Plaza was another reminder onto why at least a portion of people showed out in Jackson County and said, we don't want to go down to an urban part of Kansas City, Missouri right now, or, a heavily trafficked part of Kansas City, Missouri right now. Whether that's downtown, whether that's Westport, whether that's the Plaza, 18th and Vine. There are places with a lot of foot traffic that people simply don't want to go. And Saturday was another reminder of why they don't want to go down there right now. Here's the report from KCTV5. They talked to a couple of folks who, ironically enough, had just moved down to the Plaza from downtown Kansas City, Missouri. And here's what they had to say in this KCTV5 package after the shooting on Saturday night just outside of Shake Shack. Thankfully, nobody was injured, but windows blown out in the whole 9 yards.
Gianni, the people I talked to told me to move from downtown to the Plaza to get away from crime, but now they tell me they think things are changing at the Plaza.
By the way, before we get to their comments, where have they been? And don't they realize it's like the same city? Some of the problems they were facing downtown aren't necessarily just going to go away.
We've heard more and more crime daily.
Saturday evening, KCPD investigated a shooting at the Plaza. They said multiple cars were shot into, a shocking sight on a beautiful Saturday night.
So it is a concern. We have 2 small children, and we moved to the Plaza from downtown for less crime so that we could, scooter and do all that fun stuff without shots being fired.
No one was injured.
That's a hell of a line for somebody who wants to, like, run for office or run for prosecutor in this town. I know there's a prosecutor's race right now. There's no city council races this year. But you take that lady's clip. We want to go to a place with our two kids where we can scooter without getting shot. Like, you have someone who is admitting on TV that, and they're, clearly people who aren't, like, broke. They can live in a lot of different places. They are choosing to live on the plaza, leaving downtown, in part so they can ride scooters without getting shot. And now they're on TV talking about being in the area of a shooting in broad daylight that, thank goodness, left nobody hurt. But, like, that right there is an ad for somebody who is smart and serious about cracking down on crime in this community. I don't know if there's any of those people who actually exist. I've been underwhelmed thus far by the people we've spoken to and heard from in the Jackson County prosecutor's race to replace Gene Peters Baker. But, man, that's an ad that writes itself.
In the shooting, but the investigation is ongoing. Still, the scene at the plaza had some wondering what has happened to a beloved place in Kansas City.
I would say from 15 years ago to today, it's drastically different. I don't think people want to have business here when this type of things are happening.
While no one was injured in Saturday's shooting, some are uneasy to return.
We are getting more worried.
I won't live in fear. I mean, I'll definitely keep it in mind.
Yeah, not going to live in fear. Boom, boom. Yeah, it happens. I want to live in the plaza, want to ride my Lime scooter around. Hey, yeah, how about you do this? All right, you find yourself a nice little cul-de-sac, you buy a Lime scooter, and you ride it up and down the street. I mean, there's a great idea. And you avoid the gunshots in broad daylight outside of Shake Shack, which, by the way, has been an area of problem before. Remember, it was last summer when the Shake Shack announced it was basically closing its doors early during the summer because there was too much nonsense happening and too many issues taking place in that Shake Shack on the plaza. The one thing I'll give that couple a lot of credit for is how they rightfully noted and admitted that, listen, business, real business, like high-end businesses that the plaza is trying to attract, those companies have zero interest in dealing with this crap. They have so many options. They can go up north. They can go out south, right? Zona Rosa, Town Center, whatever. They've got options now all over the place. They don't have to be on the plaza. And the sooner that city leaders realize that, the sooner they look around and they say, gosh, this place really is a ghost town. I was down there a couple of weeks ago for a lunch meeting. And even just driving around, it felt like the occupancy rate was 1 in 3. It's probably not that high, but it certainly felt that way anecdotally driving around. Nobody walking around, middle of the day, prime lunchtime. I mean, it was sad because I even in the last, 6-7 years have noticed the downturn that it's taken. And a lot of it ties back to, 2020 and what happened down there and the issues that the city has faced in the wake of the protests down on the plaza. And if it ever comes back, it's going to take time. It's going to take strong leadership, no BS leadership, and it's going to take these thugs, and yes, I will go back to that word, these thugs who have no fear of just in broad daylight shooting at people or shooting at things on the plaza, getting what they deserve. John, that's what it's going to take, man.
Absolutely, your point about the protests and all, but I would point out that prior to that, we have the teens walking 6 abreast on the sidewalk prior to that,
Sly James, right?
Yeah, I mean, there just wasn't much in terms of, I don't know if patrolling's the word, you know what I mean? But when kids are just kind of running around bumping people off the sidewalk, daring you to fight them or whatever, I imagine that's some of the same crowd that was involved Saturday, right?
Yep.
So the city leadership would be foolish to say, well, it was the protest and time will heal and let it go. No, there was another underlying problem. You've got to address all the layers of the onion here.
Well, we just need another after-school program, I think. That should solve it,
that
right?
That kind of stuff, yeah.
It's like, come on, people. Get some damn parenting in the mix here. Get some damn tough on crime prosecution in the mix. Get some city leaders who call this crap out. And let's get going here. It's ridiculous. All while the plaza's trying to be sold, by the way, as well. If you're that company in Dallas, you getting second thoughts on that? 913-408-7957. We kick it off on a Monday morning on KCMO. Eclipse today. I don't care about the eclipse. I don't know about you. I just don't care. But what's more interesting to me, and I'll get into here coming up, is there are now credible reports from the FBI and others. U.S. intelligence are warning of violence targeting mass gatherings on Eclipse Day. This was getting mainstream news over the weekend, including ABC. We'll have that report for you coming up on KCMO 95.7 FM. Mark, did you miss the part where I said I didn't care about the eclipse? I guess Mark wasn't listening to the first segment of the show, which is nothing new for the staff here on KCMO Talk Radio. Come on, guys. What are you doing?
Come on, man.
Oh,
Just having a little fun here.
Oh, gosh.
Greg Bennett's pumping me up.
I know. Greg Bennett, geez. I mean, gosh. He's fired up for this eclipse coming up this afternoon. Holy cow, John. He's ready. These weather guys are all corny weather guys today. They're all in.
I feel like this is my third once-in-a-lifetime eclipse. I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to still be here or what.
Yeah.
This is at least the third one.
2017 was the last one. And feels like just yesterday, doesn't it? Just kidding. I can't remember anything from that day, just like I won't remember this day either. But anyway, what's intriguing to me and from a news perspective, first, I see all these Airbnbs on the direct trajectory of the eclipse are, I guess, full, like 100% capacity or 0% capacity, the best way to put it, on those in the direct line of the eclipse. And I still don't understand if these people don't work. Like, do people have jobs? Are these just retirees looking for a couple-day getaway? We're going to go to an Airbnb in Cape Girardeau and look at an eclipse? Like, I don't get it. Do people not work in this country anymore? What the hell?
I have some friends that are retirees that are kind of doing it, so that's understandable.
Yeah, that I get.
Or maybe if you lived within an hour of the path, you might say, well, what the heck?
What the heck?
I guess. But it's like 20 minutes for 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to take multiple hours or days out of your week to go look at the sun and see it get covered and be like, wow, whoa, woo.
I suppose you were going to talk about the prices of the Airbnb and stuff, too. My friends had called around, and they found something in Poplar, $700 for Comfort Inn, You're like, hey, where's this B&B? Is it behind the shipping container? No, the shipping container is the Airbnb.
Well, that
They're
Poplar Bluff
right now.
That Poplar Bluff Comfort Inn's normally, $27.50 a night, right? Charging $700 a night. Holy cow! What a joke.
Wait till they find out what the continental breakfast entails.
A muffin from 7 months ago that was found under a shoe. But from a security perspective, I want to play this from ABC News, Friday night's nightly news broadcast, where it was brought up that U.S. intelligence officials are kind of sending out warning signs here when it comes to potential terrorism. Here's what we've got.
Security warning right here in the U.S. from the FBI and Homeland Security. Warning of potential threats to public gatherings. The timing of this and why they're concerned tonight. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, with late reporting.
Tonight, FBI and Homeland Security officials are warning U.S. law enforcement about the potential for terror inspired by that deadly ISIS attack in Moscow targeting a concert hall. The concern, according to the bulletin, violence targeting mass gatherings such as sports stadiums, concert venues, or houses of worship in the United States. Law enforcement told to be on the lookout for any suspicious activity. The bulletin coming just days before millions will gather to watch the eclipse on Monday. Authorities say following the Moscow attack, ISIS and its supporters celebrated the assault and shared graphic and violent attack footage, the terror group calling for similar attacks in the United States.
I'm told U.S. law enforcement is being urged to take this bulletin seriously. Sources say ISIS remains a very real threat.
Okay, there you go. ABC Nightly News with that reporting on Friday night. And, we get set for this eclipse today. We are not in the direct path here in Kansas City. That is going to go through southeast Missouri, basically right over Cape Girardeau in the Boot Heel area. So that's where that's going to be. We're going to get about an 89% coverage here in the Kansas City region. But when you look at, mass gatherings of people, in areas where there won't be, law enforcement and checkpoints and things of that nature. This is now a concern that has been brought to the attention by U.S. intelligence officials. And it's important to note this. I'm not trying to scare anybody from going to a mass gathering in the Boot Heel and looking at the solar eclipse, but it's important to note, and we shouldn't live, with our fingers in our ears and go, la, 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 this is America, nothing to see here, when you understandably, I think, have real concerns of terrorism happening right now in America. Not to fear monger, not to, try to make it political necessarily, although I do think, listen, when you've had a wide open border and 10 million people come across it over the last 3 years, you better believe there's some bad actors with bad intentions in this country now plotting God knows what. But we've gotten awfully comfortable because there really hasn't been anything of intense magnitude in well over 20 years since September 11th. If you were to go back to the days after 9/11, which now we're looking at 22, 23 years ago, and you would have told people then, in the immediate aftermath of September 11th, here's what we're going to do in 20 years. We're going to have a border policy that literally is wide open, where 10 million people have come across it, and our government does not know who a lot of these people are. There would have been outrage in this country. People would have said that is completely ridiculous. That is unsustainable. We can't be doing that in America. Look at what just happened. But time heals a lot of wounds. It shouldn't in some cases, but it does. And we forget. I mean, heck, there are kids right now, not kids, there's young adults in the workforce today that we all work with who weren't alive during 9/11. Literally, they were not born yet. If they're young adults, 22, 23 in the workforce, they weren't alive for September 11th. Think about that. So now we've got U.S. intelligence saying, hey, after the attack that took place in Russia, at least be on alert for something, God forbid, of that nature or something similar happening here in the United States. And you've got this eclipse happening today where there will be thousands of people gathered in different locations. And, it's not going to be in a protected area. It's not going to be in an area that has checkpoints, and they're going to be checking for weapons and things of that nature. And unfortunately, look at what happened here in Kansas City at the Super Bowl parade. It's times like that when things can happen that nobody expects. So if you're going to be watching the eclipse today, have a blast. I may check it out, and that'll be it. And I'll move on with my day. Coming up next on KCMO, women's basketball is all the rage coming out of the weekend. But also, the big coaches were asked about men and women's sports. What did they say? We'll play it next. So it was Final Four weekend for the men. It was championship weekend for the women. Now, what a weekend it was. You had the women's Final Four on Friday night, the men's Final Four on Saturday. Yesterday, you had the women's national championship. Unfortunately, Iowa ended up coming up short against South Carolina. South Carolina caps off its perfect season, winning its second title in 3 years. Caitlin Clark could not get it done. Tonight, you've got the men, 2 number 1 seeds. What should be a great game with a couple of the best big men in the sport we've seen in a while in UConn versus Purdue. I hate it as a Villanova guy, potentially seeing UConn win back-to-back national championships. But frankly, I don't know who's stopping them. Although I guess the 7'6" Canadian Zach Edey could be the guy to stop him. Mark, you got a parlay for us later today you can share?
I could throw one together.
All right.
I've been looking at it a little bit.
Start working on it, but don't forget about the job at hand here, okay, as the morning goes along. But on the women's side, I mean, this thing, you have seen this sport just explode in recent weeks. And it's all in large part because of Caitlin Clark, the Iowa superstar. I mean, when my dad is texting me in the middle of the day yesterday saying, hey, you watching that Iowa-South Carolina game? Like, what the hell's going on here? He should be watching, the Valero Open on NBC, the golf tournament that was taking place the week before the Masters. He's asking me if I'm watching women's basketball. Like, that's not anything I ever had on my bingo card, John, but here we are.
Interesting point. Just sidebar here, I've noticed WNBA players sending out the warning to Caitlin Clark that she's not going to, her success won't transfer to the WNBA. She's not used to what's coming. And I'm like, You mean the fact that she's used to a couple million people watching versus a couple dozen?
Yeah.
That might be the culture shock.
Yeah, that's true.
To your point, your dad's watching, right?
Yeah, he's watching, and that's not anything I ever thought I'd see. So yesterday, we don't know what the ratings are yet, but we know that last week you had 12 million people watch the Iowa LSU game, which is more people than watched every single NBA game last year outside of one finals game, and is more people than watched every Major League Baseball game last year, including every World Series game. It's unbelievable. So now you have women's basketball in the spotlight. And over the weekend, you had a reporter ask both coaches from Iowa and South Carolina to get their thoughts around men playing women's sports. Some might call these transgender women. But we're talking about biological men competing in women's sports. I mean, this has been an incredibly celebratory time for women's athletics, women's basketball. But we are in this weird time where some people can't tell you what a woman is. Some will tell you that if you have testicles, you are a female, and that's just biologically untrue. So that question was asked to both coaches over the weekend by a reporter from Outkick. That is Clay Travis's outlet that has since been bought by Fox Corporation. And I'll play the clips. Let's start with Dawn Staley. She's the South Carolina head coach. And the pauses from Dawn Staley as she gets asked this question by this reporter, the pauses are very telling. And it makes me think that maybe she doesn't believe what she's saying here. Take a listen.
One of the major issues facing women's sports right now is the discussion topic about the inclusion of transgender athletes, biological males, in women's sports. I was wondering if you would tell me your position on that issue.
Pause.
Damn, you got deep on me, didn't you?
It's not that deep. Just answer the question. It's really not that deep.
I'm under the opinion of
This is tough.
If you're a woman, you should play. If you consider yourself a woman and you want to play sports or vice versa, you should be able to play. That's my opinion. You want me to go deeper?
Do you think transgender women should be able to participate
that's your question
in
you
college
want
basketball?
me to ask. I mean, you want to ask, so I'll give you that. Yes. So now the barnstorm of people are going to flood my timeline.
Oh, I'm a victim.
And be a distraction to me on one of the biggest days of our game. And I'm okay with that. I really am.
All right. That's Dawn Staley, South Carolina basketball coach, getting asked what she called a very deep question. Should human beings with testicles be allowed to play women's sports? This is now what we call a very deep question in 2024. And I don't believe, and this is just me listening to someone speak there, I don't believe that Dawn Staley believes what she said. I don't believe that Dawn Staley actually thinks that men should be playing women's sports. But I think she sat there at that podium and she said, you know what, for right now, it will be less controversial for me and my team if I answer it that way. I'm not defending her saying that, but let's be honest. If you are actually strong in your conviction and you have a very solid, firm belief in the idea that men should be allowed to play women's sports, do you hem and haw and literally go silent for 5 to 10 seconds at a time as you're answering that question? Or are you calculating in your mind what you need to say to get this thing off your back? And I think she knew in that moment, you know what? Let's just get rid of this thing right now. And the way to get rid of it in today's media climate is to come out and say, yeah, come on in, dudes. Whatever you want to do. You want to play women's sports? Come on in.
What's the vertical?
Yeah.
What's their wingspan?
Exactly. That's the way to do it. Now, privately, Do I think that's the case for a lot of folks who might be saying that they're okay with it? No. But they're scared to death. Because you have an upper echelon, elite, media-driven narrative here that if you don't accept women or men in women's sports, well, guess what? You're anti-trans or you're a transphobe or you're whatever they're going to call you on any given day in the week. And Dawn Staley, for those who aren't big women's basketball fans, has been sufficiently woke in recent years. And she did not want to lose her woke street cred. But even she, I think, realizes in part this is nuts. And you could hear it in the way that she answered that question. I'm not defending her, not sticking to her convictions, but I'm just noting that was not a very convincing argument from somebody when she was asked a very simple question, which she called, "Well, you went deep on me there, John."
Yeah. You can't just say, hey, well, we celebrate Title IX getting us to this point where we've got millions of viewers, and I'm here to talk about some of the players, particularly my players on the team, not people who aren't here involved in the game today.
That would have been a great answer. And in many ways, that's what the Iowa coach did, Lisa Bluter. She was asked the same question by Outkick, and she took more along the lines of what John Anthony just suggested. Here's the Iowa coach on that very same question.
Coach Bluter, this morning I asked Coach Staley about the issue of allowing transgender women, biological males, to play women's sports. I wanted to give you an opportunity to give your opinion on that topic as well.
Well, thank you for the question. I understand it's a topic that people are interested in. But today my focus is on the game tomorrow, my players. It's an important game we have tomorrow, and that's what I want to be here to talk about. But I know it's an important issue for another time.
Spoken like a politician. Very nice job.
Good job.
By Coach Bluter.
Now, stiff arm.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if she was tipped off to the reporter being there, ready to ask her that question, since Dawn Staley got it first earlier in the day. But either way, that's how exactly. You stiff arm them out to the sidelines. That's an important topic for another day. Now, it's sad to think that if she does feel the way most of us feel, which is men should not compete in women's sports, she's got to kind of back off that. We live in this weird environment and world where you actually have to think twice before you say something so obvious, but that's where we are. And I saw a lot of people over the weekend, folks I follow on social media, basically admonishing Outkick for asking that question, for bringing up that topic during this, celebratory weekend of women's college basketball. Well, here's the thing. Don't blame Outkick for the fact that there is a narrative getting pushed every single day in this country that boys should be allowed to play women's sports. Don't blame Outkick or any reporter for asking that question, because we live in a world where there is a continuing drive by a small percentage of individuals who are trying to appear like the bullies on the block, who are trying to force regular people to believe things they know is inherently wrong and should not be happening. Don't blame Outkick or any media outlet for pushing back on that a little bit and for bringing this up during this weekend. If we didn't live in a world where people are trying to get guys to compete against my daughters in sports, then this wouldn't be a story. But it is. And it's not their fault. It has become such a big issue. 6:45 on a Monday morning. It is great to be back on KCMO Talk Radio. Hope you had an awesome weekend. As, the Royals had a great, my goodness, the Royals had a weekend, huh?
How about that?
My gosh, getting Mark's all decked out in his Royals gear. He's fired up.
First sweep since 2021.
Is that right? Wow. Should have had that last weekend. Might have got that tax passed, No, I'm kidding. It wouldn't have happened, no matter what.
No.
That wasn't going to sway things. But either way, good weekend for the Royals as well. As I dug more over the weekend into the jobs report, the biggest shocker that is not getting nearly enough attention, that tells you a lot about the state of the economy and the state of the country, I will share with you next on KCMO 95.7 FM and streaming all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app. We got that jobs report on Friday at 7:30, and we reacted to it in real time. It was a busy Friday morning. And in the jobs report, where over 300,000 jobs were created in March, which beat the estimates of 200,000, obviously, generally speaking, that's good news. But the devil always is in the details. And as I was looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers on Friday, right after the report came out, the biggest thing that stood out to me was that 71,000 of those 300,000 jobs came from the government. 49,000 came from your local government. That's right. That's your cities and your counties who are collecting more tax dollars and more revenues than ever before. Inflation is good for local governments because if the goods go up, guess what? The sales taxes go up. Because if goods that used to be $100 are now $120, they're collecting more sales tax dollars out of your back pocket. So it's good for them. It's also good for them when it comes to property taxes, right? As your home value goes up, they get more of your money. That's what happens. Even when they claim, oh, we're bringing down the mill levy rate, they're getting more of your money. That's how it goes. That's what they like. So governments are living high on the hog right now. I mean, Kansas City just passed a massive budget. That'll be its biggest budget in city history. So these cities, these municipalities are doing very well right now. So I saw that. I sniffed that out. We talked about it right away. But it takes a little more time to look at some of the other numbers here in the jobs report. And this stood out to me as I was looking at this over the weekend. It's not native-born Americans who are getting the bulk of these jobs. Native-born Americans lost 650,000 jobs over the last 12 months, while employment of foreign workers rose by 1.3 million. And this is part of a continuation of a trend where Americans have been, in large part, left behind in this economy. Foreign-born employment is not only several million above its pre-pandemic level, but it's even above its pre-pandemic trend when you look at some of the numbers. While native-born Americans have made no progress in 4 years, in fact, they've gone backwards, you are seeing the complete opposite when you look at some of the charts and some of the numbers. And I'll share them on my X page at Pete Mundo. You can see it there and check it out for yourself. That way you don't have to take my word for it here on the air. You can actually see the numbers firsthand. But this is exactly what is happening in this economy. Now, are there native-born Americans who are just, retiring? Are there some who are just looking for their, government handout? Are there foreign workers who are coming here and looking to hustle and live the American dream? Absolutely. And have done it, the right way. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't want to sit here and say, Americans are getting screwed and foreigners are taking their jobs. That's not fair. So I want to make sure I put that anecdote in there. Some Americans are just lazy as crap, and some foreigners want to come here and hustle.
Well, we get $6,000 dropped in our bank accounts over the last 4 years.
Yeah, at least, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So if you're new to the country, you didn't get any of that money, so you better take one of these thousands, millions of jobs that are open. So they're grabbing them.
Yes, exactly right. So it's not as simple as say, the foreigners are taking our jobs. Well, there's a lot of people who just are lazy and don't want to work, and they want to get on the government dole. That's absolutely true. But there is something to be said here for Americans, especially in the working class to working poor category, who are now competing for jobs and competing for labor with people who, in part, may not really be allowed to be in the country. And what is happening when it comes to people getting approved for work visas and things of that nature who may not even be allowed to be in the country? How is that getting worked around? What about that angle here when you talk about the employment market and the labor market at large? That is not getting nearly enough attention, but should, at the very least, be getting discussed when it comes to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and some of the reporting that's been out there, John.
I think it's no surprise the government leads the way in hiring. I would imagine most of those are in the statistical revision department as we revise that there weren't quite so many immigrants getting these jobs next month, right?
Yes.
We'll find out that this month it was a little inflated.
The revision on these jobs reports obviously never get the attention of the initial jobs reports.
That's become a full-time job for people now to revise these numbers. Right?
That is very true. That is absolutely accurate. So when you look at some of the other things that stand out in this jobs report, the labor participation rate did go up a little bit, but we are still below the pre-pandemic rate. There are millions of people who have not gotten back into the labor market. They just haven't gotten out there and gotten jobs. We haven't seen that. What about good-paying blue-collar manufacturing jobs? Where are those at? Well, that sector has been anemic. Employment is up a mere 0.1% since January of 23. You saw zero change in manufacturing employment in March of 24 in the most recent report. Zero change. And it is up 0.1% since January of 23. Meantime, every single month we are adding tens of thousands of government workers. Meantime, you got Joe Biden saying, I'm the manufacturing president, rah-rah, blue-collar Joe, Scranton Joe. The government is adding jobs, tens of thousands of jobs a month from the local to the federal level. Manufacturing jobs up 0.1% since January of 23. Zero jobs added in the most recent monthly report. Tell me who this is really working out for. It's not regular people on Main Street. Okay, Morgan Wallen. Literally last night, apparently, Let the Liquor Talk. That is hit song last night. This guy, you just heard from Fox News at the top of the hour, arrested on felony charges after allegedly throwing a chair from the roof of a bar in downtown Nashville. Holy cow. Authorities reported the chair landed approximately 3 feet away from 2 officers. I mean, that could have killed somebody. You're coming from, I think I saw, and they said 6th floor bar that he bombed a chair off the rooftop from, and it missed cops by 3 feet. I mean, the guy has gotten himself in trouble before, right? He had that issue a couple of years ago when he was caught on a Ring doorbell by his neighbor when he was just hammered, saying a word that he shouldn't have said to his buddy as he was leaving in an Uber and walking back into his house. He apologized for that. I think he went to rehab after that as well. And he's been on just a rocket ship trajectory in the country music world. And now this. I mean, this in many ways is more offensive than, saying a word he shouldn't have said, no doubt about it. But you got to go through the context of what he said when he said it, which is he's leaving his buddy after a night out of heavy drinking, and he drops a word that, listen, you shouldn't use, and I've never used talking to my friends, but context matters. This, throwing a chair off a rooftop bar and missing a cop by a couple of feet, that is just disgraceful stuff from Morgan Wallen. Gosh dang. Good music, but got to get your act together there, buddy. Holy cow. Meantime, back here in Kansas City, we're now 6 days removed from the vote last Tuesday in Jackson County that went down in flames by 16 points. And I wondered if this angle was ever going to be taken by some in local media. And it seems like it was. And the angle is as follows. And it's not done in as direct a way as this. But here's the roundabout angle that's being taken here. By voting no, you are a racist. By voting no, you turn down an opportunity for 18th and Vine to truly thrive. Here's the package from KCTV5. And it's not as direct as I just laid it out to be, but that's more or less the underlying message here. Let's take a listen.
Business owners here say they are trying to push forward and stay resilient. For some perspective here, we're about 1.5 miles away from where that Royal Stadium could have been. And although things fell through, businesses here say when one door closes, another opens.
Being a native of Kansas City, we have weathered through so many storms. And like I said before, we just wanted to be rewarded. And we thought maybe this was going to be a grand opportunity.
Kansas City's historic 18th and Vine district sits east of downtown Kansas City. Businesses like IMKC Clothing Store were hopeful the stadium could have brought fresh faces to support the district.
When you're coming in from out of town, and when you go to the venues and different things, you want everything from that city. You don't care what it is. You want everything from that city. So we was hoping that we can pretty much partake in that.
just across the street at the Soiree restaurant, manager Curtis Hale says that's the reason he voted yes for the stadium, which he says is a missed opportunity for growth.
If they do move, though, it'd be a bad deal. I mean, because they already lost the Kings. I mean, I was a kid when the Kings were still here, and I went to one of the last games that they had here, so be just kind of losing like sports after sports. So
right. Without the extra boost from the Royals, it's now on businesses to make sure their doors stay open.
It really worries me because I think the businesses, the small businesses that are down here, I mean, they're going to try to survive, however.
It will be hard, but it isn't anything that Kansas City hasn't done before.
Oh, man. Break out the violin. I mean, are you kidding me? First off, the notion that 18th and Vine was ever going to have this massive comeuppance and a windfall of business because of a Crossroads baseball stadium was always the dumbest thing and most nonsensical angle that people pushed in recent weeks. Now, people tried to sell you on it, but tell me how 18th and Vine, a mile and a half down the road, with no public transportation really going in that direction. It's not like the streetcar went east-west that way where you might be able to make a case and say, well, the streetcar, it runs east-west. It goes from 18th and Vine. It'll stop at the ballpark. That'll be good for 18th and Vine. No. Unless you're hopping on a bus, no one's parking in 18th and Vine to go to the ballpark if it was down there in the Crossroads. Like, it never made any sense. But it was pushed by people to make it act like they were doing something for 18th and Vine, when I don't think 18th and Vine was at all going to prosper based on whether or not the stadium was built in the Crossroads. But it made people sound like they were, being equitable, checking off their boxes and things like that. But I never bought that for a second. And then when you hear people, down there say, oh, now we're going to lose the teams just like we did the Kings and the A's. What was that, 1982? Things have changed. Now, do I think the teams are going to look at some other options? Yes. We've talked about that a million times. In the region, though, the sports have changed dramatically when you talk about relocation fees, the costs involved. It doesn't make economical sense right now for the team to just pick up and go. And to say that this vote was somehow against 18th and Vine, I don't know one person. We have not received one call in the months we've been covering this, unless you're getting them, John, and they're not coming on the air, of people saying, I'm voting no because I want to hurt 18th and Vine. That's what this is really about for me.
Well, a lot of people want to say Imply Municipal Stadium was downtown. It actually was in the 18th and Vine district at 22nd Brooklyn, just a little south. But to your point, no parking there. 18th and Vine's lack of development is a whole separate issue in this town, and they're right to feel maybe aggrieved that the Plaza or Zona Rosa or, Crossroads even has gotten more money. But there's no connection. The only thing is it moved the stadium closer.
Yes, closer.
To 18th and downtown to where you could maybe cab it over. But, there's a highway right there. 7149 goes through there. It would have been the whole thing.
It
so
would have been closer.
Not foot traffic.
No, yeah, exactly. It would have been closer, but closer doesn't mean doesn't mean economic prosperity.
It only counts in what? Horseshoes,
hand
grenades, H-bombs.
That's it. That is it. There is nothing there's no way. And I know it was talked about by Bob Kendrick, the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum president, saying this would be great for 18th and Vine. Listen, I think that Bob, like many people in this town, got kind of caught up in this being part of the in-crowd mentality, endorsing this move, just like the Chamber of Commerce folks, the Sports Commission, and all these other groups. We know the mayor and the big athletes and all these different organizations were told to back this. But there's nothing to suggest that people are going to be like, you know what, I'll go out to dinner at 18th and Vine. I'll then drive and go find parking in a garage near the stadium? You're not going to walk. I mean, you could, but you're not going to do it. You got to take out a bus? There was not going to be the juice to 18th and Vine out of this project that some people insisted there was going to be. Even, Royals people claimed it. Hey, this helps connect downtown and Crossroads to 18th and Vine. My ass, it was not going to happen.
Touche.
It wasn't going to happen. It sounded good on paper, but it wasn't going to happen. But they tried to sell you on it. And now, this notion of, oh, boy, 18th and Vine got screwed. You guys should have voted yes if you wanted to help 18th and Vine. Nah, it wasn't about 18th and Vine. It never was. Not one person voted no because of 18th and Vine, by the way. Looking to hurt it. Come on now. 1:54 is that Eclipse time today here in the Kansas City area. We will have 89% coverage. That's what we try to bring you every morning on KCMO. 89% of the news is our goal each and every morning. 913-408-7957. We just talked about Donald Trump's abortion stance coming out. He dropped the video here in the last half hour or so where he basically said, take it off the table. It is not a national issue if I'm in the White House. So basically trying to take that fear-mongering away from Joe Biden, who is trying to run on that issue heavily because that's all he's got. Tim is up north. Tim, good morning. You're on KCMO. What's happening, big fella? Tim going once. Tim going twice. Tim, are you there, my man, or are we going to say sayonara, see you later? All right, later does it, buddy. Well, let me get to where I was going from here anyway. Speaking of 2024, we've got Joe Biden, and there's a potential announcement coming on delaying a menthol ban. A 2-year-old proposal, you may remember this, a 2-year-old proposal to ban menthol cigarettes may be delayed until after the 2024 election. Why? Well, the president is concerned that this could erode his support within the black community. The FDA first proposed banning menthols and flavored cigars back in April of 22, but has since missed 2 deadlines for finalizing the rule, the second of which expired at the end of March. So suddenly, this does not appear to be a priority. And apparently, it's not going to be happening this year. And it's all about politics. Now, I don't much care. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to ban menthols, to be totally honest, for a lot of reasons that, frankly, people that I don't agree with on politics have noted before, right? What's the bigger problem here? Is it the menthol or is it the nicotine? I'm pretty sure only one of those two things have actually killed people. So if you're going to ban smoking, if you're the Biden administration, don't make it about the menthol. Just ban it because nicotine's bad. Ban it all or ban none of it. But don't pick and choose. We're going to ban the menthol, John.
This is like New York City wanting to ban the big gulp, right?
Yeah.
We're going to ban 100s. You can only get short cigarettes now.
Yeah, or, instead of the big gulp, you got to buy 2 20 ounces instead of the big 140 ouncer. It's like, this is just stupid. You can't legislate and you can't control people to the point of telling them what soda they can buy and how much of it they can buy and what type of cigarettes they can buy. So now you've got this Biden administration, which is like, maybe we shouldn't really be doing this because we're already hemorrhaging votes within minority communities. Hispanic and Latino voters are, as we've seen in a lot of polling, shifting away from the Democratic Party. So maybe banning menthol cigarettes is not the best plan right now, they claim.
I don't know what the implication is here. Both my grandfathers smoked menthol, and they weren't in Biden's preferred voting bloc.
Yeah. I didn't think you had a black grandpa, John.
Right,
you might have surprised me with some news this morning.
You never know.
You never do know, but you didn't have that,
No, I didn't. So the implication seems a little...
Well, here's the thing.
Right.
It's what they, it's how they view certain voting blocks.
Yeah.
We're going to lose the black vote because they love their menthol cigarettes, so we can't touch those. It's like they literally boil people down to little specific boxes.
That's what it seems like, indeed.
They're not going to vote against Joe Biden because of the economy. They're not going to vote against Joe Biden because of the border. But, boy, if we touch those menthols, we're screwed, says the guy who famously once said this.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Yeah. Let's never forget that line, okay? Are you really surprised the guy who said that is now also potentially looking at black voters through the prism of Boy, they love their menthols. We can't be touching the menthol cigs this time. I mean, I don't know about that. That wouldn't be too good, right? I mean, it's case in point of how they break voters down by block. They view people and they view groups as incredibly monolithic and simpletons. And white people like this, and black people like that, and black guys like this, and Latino men like that. And it's like, no, I mean, yes, there are similarities and commonalities. There's no doubt about it, right? But is it as simple as they make it out to be in political polling world? No, it's not. No matter how much they try to convince you otherwise, it's not, John. It never has been, and it certainly never will be as the world gets more and the country gets more complex every single day.
Yeah, I guess my street cred is I order spicy when I go to Popeyes. So that would seem to give me street cred, I guess, with these people.
Well, you go to Popeyes. That's enough in my book,
that's
man.
One. I order the spicy. That's two. None of this mild.
Man, between that and your filet of fish nonsense, I question your judgment more and more every single day.
I'm still here, aren't I?
Well,
you see
barely.
The hair?
I mean, you got great hair. You had a quadruple bypass 4 years ago.
Looking corpse.
Well, oh, man. It is Eclipse Day, of course. We're keeping an eye, literally and figuratively, on that. We had one of our neighbors dropped off the little sunglasses on our front porch the other day, and I was outside with the girls, and Claire's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "There's these glasses because there's this thing happening on Monday, and I don't want to talk about it because I don't care, and this is so ridiculous." But anyway, the glasses are now in the house, so I guess we'll be watching maybe.
Brielle was about her age last time the eclipse came through.
Was she into it?
And she was into it, but I had to keep the 2-year-old at bay inside, so it was kind of like, hey, keep your glasses on. It was kind of like a shuffling thing.
Well, you have brought up something I didn't think about. Corralling the 2-year-old to not try to look up because God knows she's not keeping those glasses on. So thank you for that parental advice there, Mark.
I have to get a helmet.
Yeah, seriously. I'm just going to take her in the basement and put on Bluey for 20 minutes because I'm not risking that. Kid's going to blow out her eyes. She's not going to pay attention to anything. My goodness. She's really having a tough time with number 3 being around now. So,
yeah, you could run a Mylar balloon in front of the lamp and tell her that was it.
She's listening less than ever before, and that's saying something in our house.
Oh.
I'm a little nervous for the schools that are around here that are doing watch parties. They're going out to the playground. Are all the kindergartners going to keep their glasses on? I'm a little nervous for that.
I got a great idea for teachers and schools today. Great idea. Teach them something that matters. Keep them in the damn classroom and teach them how to read and teach them how to write and teach them how to do math. And stop with this. We're going to go out in the playground and stare at the sun like a bunch of lunatics for 15 minutes.
They've been learning for their science part. They've been doing planets and stuff like that leading up to it. So it's kind of part of their thing.
Okay. All right. I'll buy that to some degree.